Well, we're over at our ship saw right now, and we're going to be cutting some of the scarves in the caps. You know, one's being cut from the end into the shoulder, and the other one's cut the other direction. So, you know, we're going to cut a couple, and then we're going to take them in and do some fitting and come and cut some off. Cutting scarves like this with a bandsaw really isn't for everybody. In the first place, they don't have equipment that's capable. And even if they have equipment that's capable, you know, you have to know an awful lot about bandsaws and how to set them up to get them to do something like this. Let's talk about these scarves now. I made them 13 inches long, and there's a reason for that. I can't make them much longer than that, but I could make them shorter. But it's just as easy to make them long as it is to make them short, as a matter of fact, and they hold much better. It's got more surface area, so that's what I do. And like I say, this piece right here is going to get cut off right here, right here. Now this piece is going to overlap this piece. So it's got a little step right there that's going to butt into this little thing right here. So this one's going to be running downhill like that and runs right out at the other end. This one starts right here and runs right out at the other end. The reason why I'm doing the scarves this way is because that little step makes it so when I glue it up, the glue line will look perfectly straight across. And that's what I want. I don't want it to run out like a feathered end, because what happens when you surface it, the glue lines ends up being like a little bit wavy like that. And you can see very easily that you've done it. Not good. This is the way we're going to do it right here. We're going to end up putting a nice line on there, nice and perfectly straight from where we want to go. And we're going to follow that on the bandsaw, and we have to put a nice one on here. So I'm going to do that actually right in place, because I'm going to make these hang over like that. And then I'm going to take a little straight edge and put it on there from this corner to here and draw a line on there. The only difference between the two pieces really is this one accepts this one. So on this one, I'm going to take this material off and leave that. And on this one, I'm going to keep this material and cut this material off. So in effect, you know, you've made the whole scarf roughly, and then I'm going to smooth them out. They feather right out on the other end where you don't see it on the bottom. And the reason for that is because I can use an electric plane or any kind of plane, you know, and not have a step on both ends, because the other end doesn't need it. You know, really you get more glue surface if you don't do it, you know, and you never see it. It's down against the rail down here. Now I'm taking my piece over to the bandsaw, and you can see I'm using a step ladder for the infeed table. Now let me show you what I got going on here. I have this piece of aluminum right here. It's welded together at a 90-degree angle, and it's accurate. It really is for the things that I want to do. Now when I make this cut, it's going to run out right here. I'm going to start. I've got it hanging over the other end, so it's standing up straight. It doesn't matter if it gets to the end. So now I'm going to put a clamp right here. Now this is pretty important, because you have to clamp it beyond where you're going to cut, because what's going to happen when I push it through, this thing is curved. You can't put it on any kind of stand back aft there that's going to work out for every position. I can pick this thing up and see that thing move down, right? It's still 90 degrees sitting on that. So I can adjust it if I want to as I'm going along. I'd push along and then just hammer it a little bit and then just keep going. I've got the middle piece on the starboard side, and I'm going to cut the forward end of the middle piece first. That would be the bottom of a scarf. So this is a freehand cut, and what I need to do is to try to get that pencil line lined right up with the blade. Otherwise, as soon as I start cutting, I'll have to correct, you know, and I may have to correct a little tiny bit, but not much. And, you know, I'm going to go very slowly because I can. You know, I'm not struggling. You know, the other end is stable, all those kinds of things. And the slower I go, the closer to the line I can keep it. And that just makes it so I don't have to remove so much of the saw cut to fit the scarf later on. Now we've flipped it around, and this is the only piece that's scarfed on both ends, because the forward piece comes into it and the after piece comes into it. So this cut right here, I'm not cutting up to a shoulder. You know, I started with a butt end on it, about 1/4 of an inch away from the surface, and then I'm letting the blade follow the line as usual, and then cut right out, feathered out. That would be down. That's the bottom side of the scarf on the after end of the middle piece. Now, when the blade drifts out of the cut, once it's out on one side, it kind of wants to just pop right out. That's where you get that little lump right there when you're cutting out of a scarf. Well, what I have to do here is kind of line this up with that. I don't expect the two lines to really line up with each other. They'll be a little off, maybe a degree or something like that. I'm going to use the end of this one to cut this. The top piece, I started with a little shoulder and it ran right out, so that piece is missing. This piece, I ran up to a shoulder, so I have to cut this off. Now, the ends right here are not cut exactly right. This line on this one doesn't match this one right here. I took them from a curve on the inside, and that's what happens right there. So what I'm going to do is space this one up a little tiny bit and clamp it down nice and tight. So when I cut across here, it won't vibrate and all that kind of stuff. So I'm also going to touch up all of this cut, top and bottom. So when you squeeze it down, it looks really nice and tight. I got this one clamped down good enough. Let's put a spacer in it and clamp that one down. Now, making this cut right here, I'm going to hold the blade tightly with my fingers up against the end of the other piece and, go back and forth, cut it. It's a little difficult, but once you get it in there, a little slot, then you draw way back and use the tip of your saw because it's easier to cut it without making a radius out of the cut. That may have done it right there. I heard a little snap. Yeah, just pop down. Yep, that's it. Let's take this off. Take my saw from there. Lift this up. Take that piece out. Just like that. Now, you see a little gap here because of the thickness of the saw cut. So I either have to pound one up or the other one down, and I'll have to keep doing that as I fit this. But I'm also going to surface these two boards right here. So the first thing I can do is really kind of swing that one apart, and then I'll surface this and the shoulder. Now, there's only one tool for me to use right here, and that's a rabbet plane. I use them for all kinds of things, and I use a block plane very little. This is actually better than a block plane because it ejects out the side. And I can slice the pieces off by holding the plane 45 degrees to the direction that I'm pushing it. Now, it works straight across, it works, with the grain, it even works against the grain because I've got that thing sharp as a razor. Now I'm trying to get this nice and flat, and you can see the saw cut over here just a little tiny bit, and you can see it over here. So, I know it's got a little crown in it, and I can feel it that way when I clean it. So I want to get rid of that crown. And I do have a shoulder there. So I really have to start there. I can't bang into the shoulder. I have to start right there and push it. Couple strokes down there. Now this may seem simple, but it's a little tricky really because you can't push the plane blade out the other side or you stand a chance of chipping it. So you do have to work it in both directions, and I'm just going to work at that very corner until it's flat. And then I start working my way out of the corner, sometimes with a kind of a diagonal push or sometimes a little straight across, and other times I have to work from one direction or the other because the grain has to cooperate a little bit. I've got the forward piece on the bench this time because I have to smooth it out upside down. And I'm starting with the electric plane where that lump is, and then I just work my way forward, you know. And basically it's the bottom of the saw cuts that gives me exactly where I want to be. Once I see those saw cuts start to fade out, I'm going to stop right there and then maybe check it with my rabbet plane and work it by hand. Well, that was the rough cut right there with the electric plane. You know, I smoothed out all the bandsaw cuts, and there was quite a lump right here where the bandsaw couldn't keep going. It just popped out the side. So that's normal with a bandsaw right there. And basically, I'm just going to take my rabbet plane and just go over it a little bit. I want to see how flat it really is. So you can use this thing in numbers of different ways, but I much prefer a plane like this compared to, you know, say a block plane or something like that. It just doesn't perform like this. So now I'm just going to make sure it's straight in this direction. That's pretty good. How about here? Just like every plane, I kind of put it down there, and I'm going to go that direction, but I got the plane in this direction, and it makes it slice everything off in these curls like that. Yeah, and it just makes cut so much better. Now I've got all the saw cut right out of it. I cut the pencil line off right there at the end, and I've got my little butt right here. Now I'm going to put this one in position and even it up the way I want it up here. And look at that. Fits pretty good nice in there, but there's a space right here and it's touching over here. So I'm going to have to plane some end grain on both pieces to get them to match up real nice. Planing the shoulder or the butt end is different because kind of the same as the flat part, you can't push the plane out the other side. You'll chip it. So you have to work it from both sides. Basically, you know, it takes some practice. It takes a very sharp tool, and you know, it takes some time. Let me pull it down and see how it fits before I even plane this. All right, now I've planed this one nice and straight, and it's kind of touching right there a little bit, mostly on this corner right here. So now I'm going to plane this piece. You know, and all this work is being done right in place. I don't take it over to a bench, you know, and all those things and clamp it down with something fancy or anything like that. This stuff is different than like furniture, you know, or something. These are just techniques that you come up with after years. So I'm going to overlap this now, stay like that, and I'm going to put a spacer in here. All right, now I'm going to make this face nice and straight, and it's up off the other piece. That makes it that much easier because I'm not in a rabbet, really. So I'm going to plane a little bit more off this end once I get it straight, and that should close it up quite a bit. Cutting the butt end, it sounds a little intermittent because it is. It's cutting the corner a little bit, and the thing's not perfectly straight across. So after a number of strokes, it starts sounding better, and it comes out nice and straight. Like that. Well, there's our fit right there. Now, it looks really nice straight across like that, and it'll always look like that. You know, if I had run it out, like I say, when you surface it, you're going to get this odd kind of a line, and it's also going to be fairly wide because of the angle. So that doesn't look good. This looks much better like this.